1990년 5월 성실한 병원 직원이자 자상한 어머니였던 젠 코넬은 간만에 휴가를 즐기고자 11살의 딸을 친한 친구에게 맡겼습니다. 그렇게 꿀같은 휴가를 보내고 새벽에 돌아온 그녀가 목격한 것은 그 어떤 부모도 봐선 안 될 광경이었습니다. 어떤 잔혹한 범죄로 인해 그녀의 딸과 친구가 살해된 채 아무렇게나 널브러져 있었기 때문이었죠. 그리고 이 사건을 접수한 사법당국은 모든 병력을 투입했습니다. 단서를 찾고 끝없는 인터뷰를 하고 주변을 수색하였죠. 그렇지만 범인은 그림자처럼 흔적도 없이 사라진 상태였습니다. 그리고 시간은 1년, 10년, 20년이 흐르도록 아무런 단서도 없이 미제 사건으로 모두에게 잊혀지는 것 같았습니다. 그런데 25년이 지났을 때 법의학 기술의 비약적인 발전으로 새로운 희망이 생겼습니다. 비록 시간이 흐르면서 일부 증거가 훼손되었고 기억도 흐릿해져 해결이 불가능해 보였지만 이 덕분에 이 사건에 돌파구가 생긴 셈이었죠. 하지만 이것으로도 아직 풀리지 않는 의문이 남았습니다. 과연 이것이 무엇이었을까요? 25년이나 기다려온 피해자의 어머니인 젠과 그 지역사회의 정의를 가져다 줄 수 있었을까요? 그럼 먼저 사건 당일로 돌아가서 자세한 이야기를 들어보겠습니다. 1990년 5월 9일 수요일 저녁, 플로리다주 케이프 코럴의 기온은 27도로 비교적 따뜻한 날이었습니다. 코트야드 아파트 단지에 살던 젠 코넬에게는 평범한 날의 시작이었죠. 두 자녀를 둔 싱글맘인 젠은 막내딸인 11살 로빈과 함께 살았습니다. 케이프 코럴 병원에서 일하고 있던 친한 친구인 32살의 리사 스토리도 있었죠. 그리고 그날 일찍부터 젠은 리사가 방 정리하는 것을 도와주었습니다. 그러던 중 젠의 남자친구는 밤에 자기 집에서 TV를 함께 보자며 제안해왔고 리사는 로빈을 돌봐줄 테니 다녀오라고 얘기했습니다. 그리고 밤 10시 30분경 젠은 로빈을 침대에 눕히고 잘 자라는 키스를 해주고 사랑한다는 말까지 해준 뒤 고장난 정문 자물쇠 하나를 잠그지 않은 채 외출했습니다. 친구인 리사가 딸을 돌봐주는 동안 남자친구의 집에서 잠깐 TV를 보고 올 생각이었죠. 그런데 그 계획은 TV를 보다가 소파에서 잠이 들어버리는 것으로 이어졌고 시간은 훌쩍 지나 새벽 4시가 되어서야 깨어났습니다. 병원 출근이 1시간도 채 남지 않은 시각이었죠. 그렇게 서둘러 집으로 돌아간 젠은 문 앞으로 다가갈수록 안에서 들려오는 희미한 발자국 소리에 불길한 느낌이 들었습니다. 그리고 정문에 다다랐을 때 고장나 있던 자물쇠까지 잠겨 있어서 문을 열고 들어갈 수가 없었습니다. 그래서 옆문이 있는 쪽으로 가보니 미닫이 문은 열려 있었고 주방 불도 켜져 있었습니다. 더욱 이상한 느낌이 든 젠은 조심스럽게 안으로 들어갔고 거실 선반에 있던 딸의 사진들이 다림판 위에 늘어져 있는 것을 봤습니다. 이게 무슨 일인가 싶을 정도로 오싹한 생각이 든 젠은 2층으로 곧장 달려갔고 곧 눈에 들어온 광경은 그녀를 주저앉도록 만들었습니다. 그리고 잠시 후 911에 신고하였습니다. 수년 후 케이프 코럴 경찰과의 인터뷰에서 젠은 그 충격적인 밤에 겪은 일을 회상했습니다.
I actually found my daughter and my friend. I had been out for the evening, and when I returned home, there was an issue with my door, and I couldn't get in my front door, so I went around to the slider, and the slider was open. So I entered through the slider and got an eerie feeling at that time. Actually, I thought I was walking into my house being broken into. And I went up the stairs, and when I went up the stairs, the first thing I saw was my daughter, and she was in my bedroom. And out of the corner of my eye from the landing, I could see Lisa, and she was still in her bed. And then that's when my mind just was going 100 miles an hour trying to figure out what is going on here. And I, called 911 and tried to resuscitate Robin. And in my mind, I knew she was gone. She was cold. She was a little hard. And I knew that she was gone. But I still thought maybe I'd get a miracle. and I kept screaming for Lisa. I didn't know at that time that she also was killed. I kept screaming for her to tell me what happened here, what's going on, and I'm on the phone with 911 with Robin, screaming for Lisa. And then the police got there, and and here we are. The police got there and kind of invaded and to start their investigation. I think probably looking back on it, even though I remember every detail, I think maybe I was in shock. Because intelligently, like I said, I knew she was gone, but I just couldn't process how, why, who, what happened here.
젠의 911 신고 직후 도착한 경찰은 참혹한 현장을 마주했습니다. 리사와 로빈 모두 질식사당했고 로빈의 작은 시신은 충격적인 자세로 놓여 있었습니다. 범인은 심지어 시간을 들여 다림판 위에 딸의 사진들을 늘어놓았는데 젠은 이것이 범인이 어떤 메시지를 전하려는 의도였다고 느꼈습니다. 그렇지만 그 의미는 알 수 없었죠. 그리고 경찰은 범인이 리사의 운전면허증, 신용카드, 수표책, 그리고 선물용으로 구입한 새 손목시계 등 여러 물품을 가져간 것을 확인했습니다. 또한 식탁 의자에서 처음 보는 흰색 양말 한 켤레와 TV 위에 놓인 토요타 차량 열쇠 꾸러미를 발견하였죠. 형사들은 그 열쇠가 범인이 남기고 간 것이라 예상했습니다. 그리고 로빈의 생식기에선 온전한 상태의 정액이 발견되었기에 범인은 성폭행까지 저질렀다는 것을 알 수 있었습니다. 그리고 그 정액을 바탕으로 용의자의 혈액형이 확인되었는데 그건 O형이었습니다. 추가로 금발의 머리카락도 발견되어서 O형의 혈액형인 금발 남성이라는 것을 알 수 있었죠. 이것을 바탕으로 경찰은 수많은 사람들을 상대로 DNA 채취를 하여 조사를 시작하였고 사건 당시 토요타 차량 카메라 기록을 확인하고 수백 건의 조사를 했지만 모든 단서는 막다른 길에 봉착하였습니다. 형사들은 이후 15년 동안 증거를 꼼꼼하게 검토하며 용의자로 이어질 수 있을 만한 모든 가능성을 염두에 뒀습니다. 그러던 중 140세대가 사는 코트야드 노스 아파트 단지와 주변 거리의 모든 주민을 면담하는 등 젠과 리사의 지인들을 빠짐없이 조사했습니다. 그 결과 수사관들은 용의자 목록을 10명으로 좁히는 데 성공하였고 그 중에는 이 사건 직후 미시시피로 이사한 것으로 알려진 자범이 하나 있었습니다. 다른 집을 몰래 훔쳐보다 걸린 혐의로 여러 번 체포된 전력이 있던 사람이었죠. 실제로 그의 전 여자친구는 사건 이후 그의 이상한 행동으로 인해 경찰에 신고했지만 의심스러운 정황에도 불구하고 결국 그는 용의선상에서 제어되었습니다. 그리고 이 기간에 아메리카스 모스트 원티드라는 프로그램에 이 사건은 2번이나 소개되었습니다. 워낙 충격적인 사건이었고 여전히 단서가 없이 미제로 남아있었기 때문에 모두의 큰 관심이 필요했기 때문이었죠. 첫 방송은 2006년 1월 21일, 두 번째는 2007년 7월 28일이었습니다. 그리고 그 결과 많은 제보가 들어오기도 했습니다. 케이프 코럴 경찰은 은퇴한 뉴욕 경찰국 형사인 피델 발란을 6개월 계약직으로 영입하여 이 사건을 전담하게 했지만 피델의 노력에도 불구하고 사건은 미제로 계속 남았습니다. 그리고 그 시점인 2009년에 플로리다는 획기적인 DNA 채취법을 법안으로 통과시켰습니다. 이 법률은 유죄 판결을 받은 사람뿐만 아니라 중범죄로 기소된 모든 사람들의 DNA를 채취할 수 있도록 하는 것이었죠. 궁극적인 목표는 잠재적 범죄 용의자에 대한 데이터베이스를 쌓고 무고한 사람들의 결백을 입증하고자 하는 것이었습니다. 그리고 이 시점에도 젠은 여전히 범인에게 정의의 심판이 내려질 것이라는 희망을 간직하고 있었습니다.
Not giving up. I'm not going away. I'm not giving up. And thankfully I've been able to keep the Cape Coral Police Department on board with my promise. I told them all about my promise. I promised the day I had to say goodbye that for as long as I was alive I would never stop looking for who hurt them. And like I said, I've managed to establish a relationship and keep the Cape Coral Police on board, and they're still looking as well. Just keep doing this as long as we can reach out and ask people, because I'm convinced in my heart and soul that someone still in this community may have knowledge of who did this crime, and they keep holding back, and every year I say, it's time, please come forward. They're not helping themselves by keeping this to themselves. If anybody knows anything, which, like I said, in my heart and soul, I'm convinced someone knows, they need to come forward to the police department, and they need to help bring justice to this case.
쟤는 비극적인 사건에도 불구하고 앞으로 나아가기 위해 최선을 다했고 결국 살인사건이 있었던 날 밤에 만난 남자친구와 결혼하게 됐습니다. 그의 성을 따랐지만 안전을 위해 공개적으로는 코넬이라는 이름으로 불리길 원했습니다. 2016년 케이프 코럴 경찰국은 수사의 범위를 넓히기 위해 SNS 캠페인을 시작했습니다. 또한 플로리다 남서부 전역에 광고판을 설치하였죠. 그리고 2016년 9월 경찰은 살인사건이 발생한 지 25년이 지나서야 기자회견을 열어 새로운 정보를 발표했습니다.
Last week, the Cape Coral Police Department detectives were notified of a CODIS database hit on DNA taken from a recent arrestee in the county jail that matched the suspect's DNA samples from the Cornell story case. Over the last several days, detectives worked tirelessly interviewing this arrestee and obtaining a body worn for additional samples to confirm the initial CODIS hit. The FDLE Crime Lab has been instrumental in this case over the last 26 years to expedite this testing. Detectives from our Investigative Services Bureau have been in constant contact with the State Attorney's Office since this discovery. It is my pleasure to tell you that today, the arrest warrant was served on Joseph Zeiler, last name spelling C-I-E-L-E-R, white male, date of birth of 4/15/1962. The murders of Robin Cornell and this story. We got it.
I just dreamt about this day, never knowing if it was ever going to happen, but I never lost faith, and I never lost hope that someday we would all know who killed my beautiful daughter and Susan's sister, Lisa. Well, we all know that miracles exist. I feel in my heart that there is a God because I've prayed for this day every day for 26 years and could never let it go, how he tortured and killed my baby and my friend. And I thank every one of these men standing in this room for listening to me, and for not arresting me for stalking them for 26 years. I cannot be more grateful today. I cannot be more happy. I want my daughter and my friend to finally rest in peace.
발표 한 달 전 노스포트 마이어스의 54세 조셉 차일러는 맏아들과 격렬한 다툼을 벌이다 공기총을 쏴서 아들을 다치게 했습니다. 이 사건으로 그는 치명적인 무기를 사용한 가중폭행 혐의로 체포되었죠. 이 혐의가 2급 중범죄였기 때문에 2009년 DNA 채취법에 따라 DNA 면봉 채취가 이루어졌습니다. 플로리다 법 집행국은 자일러의 DNA가 코디스로 알려진 DNA 데이터베이스 프로그램에서 일치 결과를 받았을 때 케이프 코럴 경찰국에 알려주었습니다. 자일러로부터 추가 DNA를 채취하여 검사했습니다. 그 결과는 수십 년 전 코넬과 스토리 살인 현장에서 발견된 DNA와 연결되었습니다. 두 건의 살인 당시 28세였던 자일러는 성폭행 2건, 주거침입 1건, 1급 살인 2건의 혐의로 기소되었습니다. 그리고 체포 다음날에 살인 혐의에 대한 첫 법정 출석을 했습니다. 하지만 수십 년이 지난 복잡한 사건이라 다양한 절차적 장애물, 법적 조치, 그리고 물리적 어려움이 있었죠. 그래서 진짜 재판이 시작되기까지는 여기서 6년이 더 소요되었습니다.
Jury selection starts this morning in the trial of the man accused of killing an 11-year-old and a babysitter in Cape Coral. Joseph Zeiler is charged with the double homicide. It happened more than 30 years ago.
검찰은 유죄 판결과 사형 선고를 받을 수 있는 강력한 증거를 갖고 있다고 확신했습니다. 그들은 로빈이 자고 있던 침대 시트에서 발견된 정액이 7천억 분의 1이라는 확률로 자일러와 일치한다고 주장했습니다. 또한 살인이 일어난 같은 달에 자일러와 교제를 시작해서 그가 체포된 후에야 헤어진 그의 오랜 여자친구의 증언도 들을 예정이었습니다. 자일러의 취향에 대해 물었을 때 그녀는 로빈이 발견된 자세와 동일한 자세를 좋아한다고 설명했습니다. 또한 그녀는 26년간의 관계 동안 그러한 문제를 전혀 목격한 적이 없다며 오토바이 사고로 인한 기억 상실증이라는 자일러의 이전 주장을 반박했습니다. 자일러의 변호인단은 DNA 증거에 이의를 제기하고 다른 용의자를 제시하며 피고인이 범행 당시에 다른 곳에 있었다고 주장하는 등 다양한 방어 전략을 내세울 예정이었습니다. 그리고 본 재판은 2023년 5월 16일 화요일에 시작되었습니다.
Before the code is hit, the defendant gets arrested for an unrelated charge. But the result of that is his mouth is swabbed for DNA. And that DNA is put into CODIS. That's how we get the match. At the time of the murders, he's living in Cape Coral, and he works at Marine Concepts of Cape Coral, which is very close to Jan's house. So in September of 2016, the day after the code is hit, CCPD brings Joseph Zeiler there to talk to him. And from the word go, he is evasive. He tells them that in 1998, he had a motorcycle accident and has no memory of anything that happened the 8 years before that. Doesn't know his parents' name, doesn't know if he's ever even been to Cape Coral. He knows nothing. He makes it sound like he's completely helpless after this motorcycle accident, has no memory, and his girlfriend Bonnie has to take care of him because he's almost an invalid. And when confronted with the murders, he knows nothing, he doesn't know the people, the places, he has no memory. But you're also going to hear a statement that he gave to law enforcement in August when he was originally arrested on that unrelated crime. And he knows facts and can answer questions. He told them how he used to work in Cape Coral and has been with Bonnie for almost 26 years, and how he knows where he was the day his son was born in 1991. You're going to hear directly from the defendant's mouth in phone calls that he makes to Bonnie. He's instructing her how to get a bondsman and put up the house for collateral, sell off his possessions, how she can become his power of attorney. Clearly someone that is capable of taking care of themselves. There are two different Joseph Zeilers, the one you meet before being confronted with the murders and the one after.
My privilege and pleasure to represent Mr. Zeiler here today along with Mr. Hollander. My opening statements can be short because, in all candor, we don't have to prove anything. It's the state's burden of proof in this case. We don't have to disprove anything. Mr. Zeiler, if he elects to testify, may testify, or he may not testify. If he doesn't testify, you can't hold that against him because he's exercising his constitutional right. And you told us early on that you wouldn't hold that against him, that you wouldn't consider it, you wouldn't consider what he might have said had he taken the stand. But ultimately, it's his choice, and we will discuss that once the state rests their case. Cape Coral Police Department, when they investigated this, literally went out and interviewed hundreds of people. They interviewed them, they took DNA from a lot of them, they took hair samples from a lot of them. What should be significant to you, though, is they didn't talk to Mr. Zeiler, they didn't take any DNA from Mr. Zeiler, they didn't take any hair from Mr. Zeiler until 26 years later. And why was that? Because he was not on their radar. He was not a suspect in this case. Jan Cornell couldn't provide any real assistance to the Cape Coral Police Department about Joseph Zeiler because he was basically nobody at that point in time. There's a lot of physical evidence that you will entertain, and I agree with the counsel. Some of it gets used in testing. There were dozens and dozens of hair samples taken from inside the apartment. There were fingerprints, there were footprints. Obviously, there were other body samples that were taken from inside the apartment, supporting the fact that there were many people who had been through the apartment.
재판 첫날, 로빈의 어머니인 젠 코넬이 증인석에 섰습니다. 30년이 지난 지금, 그녀는 그 비극적인 밤을 다시 마주하고 범죄 현장 사진을 검토하며 고통스러운 세부 사항들을 진술해야 하는 힘든 상황에 직면했습니다.
When I came into the room and I found her, I immediately touched her. I screamed her name, of course, and she was called. And
at that point, did you recognize that she was dead?
I did.
What did you do next?
I started giving her CPR.
Did you change the position that she was in?
I did. I moved her.
Did you move her to that position that we saw in Exhibit 44?
Yes, I did.
So the position you moved her into was then on her back?
Yes.
Did you actually perform CPR?
Yes, I did.
What did you notice when you started CPR?
That she had a lot of congestion, like she had really been crying.
Congestion from where?
Who knows? But then when I gave her breath, I could hear her lungs aspirate. And I knew she was dead then.
What did you do next?
I actually was doing that while I had 911 coming to help me.
Did you make contact with 911?
I did.
Did you stay with Robin until the police arrived?
I did.
그리고 마침내 증인 속으로는 자일러가 등장하였고 검사는 그가 1년 전 젠 코넬에게 보낸 편지들에 대해 질문했습니다. 이 편지들은 자일러에게 적용된 증인 협박 혐의에 대한 부분이었습니다.
Letter is coming, says Joseph Adam Zeiler at the top, and then there's more, but that's the first part.
Yes.
And what are the numbers 47492/835-775?
That's my ID number followed by my booking number.
At the Lee County Jail.
Yes.
And the address of 2115 MLK Boulevard, Main Jail, Fort Myers, 33901. That's where you're being housed.
Yes.
And that letter was addressed to who, sir?
J.G. Batista and family.
At what? Well, did you address this envelope?
Yes.
And who was J.G. Batista and family?
I thought it was Jenny Gal Batista.
Oh, so you were trying to send this letter to Robin's sister then?
Yes.
Okay.
No. Yes. I was trying to send it to family, actually. So I guess I was trying to send it to everybody.
The whole Batista family?
Yes.
And in that particular letter, did you profess your innocence by claiming that it was a relative of yours that did this murder?
Yes, I was trying to defend myself because no one would listen to me.
Sir, it calls for a yes or no. Did you, in the letter, profess your innocence or allege your innocence by saying that a relative of yours had done these murders?
Yes.
Did you suggest, in addition to that, did you tell the people who this letter's addressed to that you slept with Jan Cornell, Janice, and a friend of hers in 1989, and therefore that's why your DNA is in the Courtyards North condominium?
Yes, I thought so because she didn't wash her sheets.
You know whether or not Miss Cornell washes her sheets?
How I got that is by the information I was given from you was discovery, and I thought that the only way my DNA could have gotten there was me sleeping with Jan Cornell and Leanne Deller.
Did you sleep with Jan Cornell and Miss Deller?
It's possible because I was here.
Well, now you were here.
I mean, I was here in December of '89. I testified to that earlier. And what I believe happened is I slept with Jan Cornell and Leanne Deller, and they were just too much of a pig not to wash their sheets.
And during your direct exam by counsel, your attorney, You indicate you've never been in their condominium.
I'm speculating that the only way my DNA could have got in there is if I slept with them during December '89 while I was here for the month of December.
And then it would have to follow that your DNA would have stayed viable let me finish my question. If it was January, February, March, April, May of 1990, and then, well, okay, I don't want to make it a compound question. Your DNA would have still been there 5 months later.
Yes.
And that's because they're pigs and they don't wash their sheets, right?
Exactly.
You know that?
Well, I assume that, just like you're assuming that
But just so the record's clear, when I said they're pigs and they wash their sheets, that's what you said.
Absolutely.
All right. And sitting in jail, pending charges on this case, you thought that this was appropriate to send the 11-year-old who was murdered, his mother.
Well, nobody would listen to me, so I was trying to defend myself. Can I speak?
No, sir. Wait for a question, please.
May I retrieve the exhibit?
Go ahead.
Approach with exhibit 312.
312.
Take a moment to look at that letter, please. Was the previous exhibit admitted? Move to admit 311 if I didn't. Okay.
311 is admitted.
Sir, on the second page, that which shows the envelope which was sent to, again, J.G. Batista and addressed from Joseph Adam Zeiler with the same numbers. Is that also a letter you wrote?
I concede I wrote all this.
And in this second letter, you told you directed this towards Jan Cornell, correct? And when you said this,
I can't say unless you show me the letter.
I am. I'm going to direct you to the page right now, page 3. So it's the page right after the envelope picture. On the second paragraph. Did you address to Jan Cornell the following? The only way, underlined, is to admit you possibly could have slept with me as a night encounter and you can't remember, you won't be sure, you won't retest. Did you?
Hold on a second.
Okay.
I don't see Jan Cornell's name above that. You said Jan Cornell's name was there on the
No, I
page.
said, who were you, I'll ask it this way. Who were you addressing when you made that statement? Is there someone else in the Batista family you slept with? According to you?
Let the witness answer the question before you ask another question, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes.
Yes to what?
I don't know. Ask it again.
All right. I'm going to ask it open-ended. It's right. A very open-ended question. When you made that statement in the letter, who were you directing that
Jan
to?
Cornell. I was trying to get her to ask to retest NB32A because it doesn't contain my DNA. I don't believe it is.
You've been sitting here for the last 2.5 days, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Did you hear the testimony of who was it that retested?
Jim Pollock.
Of Jim Pollock. Was it Jim Pollock?
Jim Pollock, it was
The retest.
Deb Ortman, Vicky Molino,
All right.
all of them.
Well, the DNA witnesses, did you hear them say that they actually did retest NB32? That they actually took the sheet, recut another sample, and had another analyst do the same test? Did you hear that?
Yes.
So the retesting was done.
I believe FDLE is siding with the prosecution. Of course they're going to say that.
Okay, and their opinion on that was that Jan Cornell was excluded from that DNA.
I don't think she was. I think that if it was listed, that's the reason I asked for it to be retested, because I don't believe that.
Now, if you flip the page for me and you go to the 4th page of this pack, of that exhibit, and I'm going to ask you to look at the bottom. Did you also direct this to Jan Cornell? If you knowingly allow them to convict the wrong man out of spite and vengeance, I will drag this, parentheses, and you, Robin and Lisa, through appeals all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely. I wrote that.
And did you also write on the next line, I'm innocent, I will prove it no matter how long it takes. Do you really want the rest of your life spent in court?
Yes, I wrote that.
You're threatening then Miss Cornell with what you're going to do should she not, what? What do you want her to do?
Well, she's calling me a rapist and a murderer, so what? I can't write that? I mean, she's calling me a rapist and a murderer, and I'm calling her a pig for not washing her sheets. Paper right here that they're trying to hide from you.
Mr.
Right
Seiler.
here. I still see the body of 11-year-old
Mr.
Robin
Seiler.
Cornell with the hand, with the hair of her
Ladies and
killer.
gentlemen, the jury will step out.
The blonde hair.
Mr. Seiler, the effort you've made to introduce evidence that was not previously placed before the jury is an improper action by you, sir. The document has been handed to your counsel. When I ask you to respond to the questions that are given, that is not an invitation for you to give a narrative or a soliloquy or your entire personal belief about your prosecution. You have made yourself a witness in this matter, and as such, must comport with the rules of court. Do you understand?
Yes.
Is that in any way unclear? Is that in any way unclear, Mr. Seiler? I will ask counsel, did you have a discussion with Mr. Seiler about the potential for contempt if there are further breaches?
No. The conversation about contempt related to whether he was going to testify when we came back before.
If you continue to act in this manner, I will have contempt proceedings. Is that clear?
Yeah.
Bring the jury back in.
최후 변론에서 스테파니 러셀 검사는 배심원단에게 이 사건이 명확하다고 말했습니다. DNA 증거가 조셉 자일러를 살인자로 직접 지목했다고 말이죠. 리 홀랜더 변호사는 범행 현장에서 발견된 금발머리카락과 극도로 폭력적인 범행 수법이 개인적인 동기를 시사한다고 반박했습니다. 젠과 피고 사이에 알려진 이전 관계가 없다는 점을 고려했을 때 친분이 있는 다른 사람이 진범이라고 주장하였죠. 2023년 5월 18일 수시간의 심의 끝에 배심원단은 판결을 내렸습니다.
In the Circuit Court of the 20th Judicial Circuit and in Fort Lee County, Florida, the state of Florida versus Joseph Adam Seiler in case number 16 CF 455, verdict. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Robin Cornell. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2 of the charge. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder of Lisa Story. So say we all, signed on May the 18th, 2023, by the foreperson.
Any requests from the defense? Ladies and gentlemen, please listen very carefully to my question. I'm going to go through your juror numbers. I'm going to ask each of you the same question.
5주 후 배심원단이 10대 2로 조셉 자일러에게 사형을 공고한 후 모든 당사자들이 브랜딩 판사의 판결을 듣기 위해 법정에 다시 모였습니다. 하지만 판결이 내려지기 몇 시간 전 자일러는 국선 변호사에게 개인적으로 나눌 이야기가 있다고 신호를 보냈습니다.
Relax. I'm calm. Are you okay?
I'm fine.
Relax. I'll call. Relax.
I
pitched a box, I've taken a lot better shots than that.
The court's review of other capital cases has led the court to conclude that the death penalty would be a proportionate sentence in this case. Therefore, the court concludes that under the laws of the state of Florida, the defendant has forfeited his right to live. Accordingly, it is ordered and adjudged that the defendant, Joseph Adam Zeiler, is hereby sentenced to death for the murder of Robin Cornell and the murder of Lisa Story. The defendant is committed to the custody of the State of Florida Department of Corrections for the execution of this sentence as provided by law. The defendant is hereby notified that this conviction and sentence are subject to automatic review by the Florida Supreme Court. Any objection from the state to the court's statements?
No, Your Honor.
Any objection from the defense to the court's statements?
No, sir.
Mr. Zeiler, that is the sentence and judgment of the court. Stand over to be fingerprinted. You are remanded to the custody of the sheriff for transport to the Department of Corrections.
First of all, I'd like to thank this, because without this, we wouldn't all be here. The dedication, the compassion, the hard work, the everything that was put in, it's nothing like TV, I promise you. Nothing. But nothing can take the place of hearing the words today that justice for Robin and justice for Lisa has happened. He has received the ultimate punishment that the state of Florida can give, which is the death penalty. He will never see a free moment. He will never hurt another individual on this earth. For that, I cannot be more grateful. And again, I have to go back to this team, all of them, who have stood by me for years during some very dark moments. And thank you for always giving me respect and letting me be a voice for my daughter and my friend, because I have done it, and I hope very proudly. I love them both, and I never, ever want anyone to forget either one of them. They were here, they lived. Some evil monster cut their lives so short, so unfair. But now they have peace, and now we can let them have peace. Just thank everyone, all of you.
26년 동안 젠 코넬은 딸 로빈과 친구 리사 스토리의 미제 살인 사건이라는 무거운 짐을 짊어져 왔습니다. 1990년 그 비극적인 밤 이후 그녀는 매일마다 슬픔과 정의를 향한 끊임없는 투쟁에 사로잡혀 있었죠. 어머니의 무한한 사랑을 증명하듯 젠은 법의학 기술의 발전과 같은 모든 희망의 빛을 붙잡았습니다. 그리고 마침내 사법체계가 조셉 자일러를 체포하고 재판하고 유죄를 선고하고 형을 선고했을 때 그것은 섬뜩한 과거를 밝혀냈을 뿐만 아니라 그것을 가장 필요로 했던 사람들에게 큰 믿음을 회복시켜 주었습니다. 그럼 오늘 긴 사건 이야기는 여기서 마치겠습니다. 오늘 함께 해주신 여러분께 감사드립니다. 항상 그렇듯 다음에 만날 때까지 모두 안전하고 건강한 나날이 되셨으면 좋겠습니다. 저는 톰슨이었습니다.